I think does qualify me to run for Congress, and probably more so than my current crop of candidates that are running for election here in the Democratic Party, is that I was a senior executive in the Pentagon. So I got to work with the budgets, I got to work with personnel, I got to work with IT, I got to testify before Congress. I would work the budgets and appropriations every year. Got to brief the Senate, got to brief the staffers. So unless you really worked and understand what goes on in the appropriation process and how it affects things, kind of like right now where the government's going to stop tomorrow, shut down again because we don't have a budget. We're supposed to have a budget the 1st of October. Unless you have really those things that have worked with it and kind of understand it or have seen it, it's really hard to get into it. It's really hard to understand it all. I got to understand that Medicare is not everything we'd like it to be. Tax reform that just got passed is actually going to cause Medicare to lose another $474 billion over the next 10 years. So the Republicans were promising to have revenue neutral tax relief. That did not work. It's now an additional $1.5 trillion, and that's actually going to start showing up next year. So after Mom passed, I saw the change in the House. The Republicans then had the House, and I got to see the most haphazard implementation or attempts to change things that the Republicans wanted to change. And I'm not saying Republicans are bad, frankly. There are a lot of good ideas. But their attempts at killing the Affordable Health Care Act that were basically done on the back of a napkin is the way I characterize it, was to me horrific. Well, to keep the agricultural basis for the community, I think we still have to try and enable or support our farms. So whatever subsidies that we can provide to the farms. And then I know there's a tremendous battle here on the Eastern Shore. Battle's a bad word. There's a dialogue between those that think perhaps the farming has some negative effects, if you will, to the environment. But there's some offsets to all that. So how do the environmentalists and the farmers all work together? I've actually been speaking to the Sierra Club on this. And the interesting thing about that is I think you can provide some incentives to the farmers to assist with some of the controls, if you will, that where people may think there's higher cancer rates or other things from the nitrates in the runoff, poultry or agriculture. So I think we can have some incentives for that. I think you also spoke about growth, correct? Okay, so for growth, I do understand that the Eastern Shore does have something of a limited access in areas for, let's say, internet communications and things like that. Those are things that I think have, from Senator Mikulski, tried to bring some of the internet closer to folks so they can have access to it. I do think that last mile, which we called the last mile back in the Department of Defense back in the 80s, can be met with additional federal incentives to bring that out here, which then would enable the local communities to take advantage of access to the web, which can provide employment because you can do things like web design, advertising, pretty much develop anything you want off of the web. So I'm really a full proponent for that. I do know that you guys have tremendous access to just a great historical community. So I think tourism is something that would be really helpful around here. I know also there's a big push for healthcare. I did see there's some limited beds, if you will, or some pushes to try and get the hospitals set up. Certainly something I would have to get a little bit more familiar to try and assist with that process, but something I'm willing to take on. My goal is to support the people that live in Maryland. I'm really just a local guy. I got into this race to really try and make things better for everybody. I'm not from a rich family or anything else like this. I consider myself an everyday person, so I'm here for the people of Maryland in this district.